Hi, good morning. And let me first of all thank the organizers at IMARC for hosting us, for putting on the conference. Congratulations to everybody involved in the 10th anniversary of IMARC. I think this is a hugely important gathering to bring together a range of stakeholders thinking about mining and the broader impacts of mining across the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. And really, it's an honor and a privilege to be here. So today, I'm going to be talking about what the World Gold Council believes in terms of the contribution that responsible gold mining makes to support the lives of stakeholders at and around the mine sites around the world. This is an area that's of huge importance to us and our members, 33 of the world's leading gold mining companies. And I'm delighted that after my short introductory comments, Kelly Carter from Goldfields is going to come up here and give a perspective from an operating company about the positive impact on stakeholders that responsible gold mining can have. We at the World Gold Council have a very deeply held belief that the gold mining industry can and should make a meaningful difference in contributing to people's lives, and in particular, in supporting the goals of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These, as you well know, set out 17 key areas where the business community, government, local communities at and around wherever they are living in the world, and civil society organizations need to come together to achieve meaningful progress. And we think that the mining industry at large and the gold mining industry specifically have a real responsibility to ensure that their operations are in support of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we at the WGC look at the role that responsible gold mining can play and what it can bring in terms of that positive impact. Yes, of course, in terms of jobs, in terms of economic opportunity, but also in terms of supporting livelihoods beyond the mine site, supporting health and education. All of this underpinned by a very strong belief and commitment in responsible gold mining, and the responsible gold mining principles, which is a framework set out by the World Gold Council in 2019, very clearly articulates and sets out what is good practice for any gold mining company operating around the world. Now, over the last few years, we have done a lot to document and set out the ways in which the responsible gold mining industry contributes to the benefit of stakeholders around the world. One of those has been through the development of case studies and looking at the impacts that the mining industry has. One of those is by finding stories and actually bringing new people into the mining industry to look at what the gold mining industry does and how it operates and to understand the impact it has. And for those of you that haven't already seen it, and even if you have, here's a plug to come and join us tomorrow afternoon when we are screening our new documentary, Gold: A Journey, with Idris Elba, where Idris Elba, a Hollywood A-lister, discovers what gold mining is and the role that gold mining can play in the local communities and beyond. But also, an important aspect of what we do is look to quantify. And in putting out the data, we are hoping to increase the engagement and the conversations around the way in which the gold mining industry can be a catalyst for transformation, because that's what I think the responsible gold mining industry should be. So what we do is help articulate the financial impact by actually assessing where the money goes. So we have now run this survey for the last 3 years. I'm delighted to announce here at IMARC we're putting out the latest figures for calendar year 2022, where we survey our member companies, again, 33 of the world's leading responsible gold mining companies, and we ask them, where does your money go? When you pay your bills, where does that go? So in 2022, across our member companies, so this is not the entirety of the gold mining industry, but it's a very representative subsector of it, our member companies directly contributed over $57 billion, that's US dollars, to host economies. And we split that out by the different stakeholder groups. And what is very noticeable is that by far the biggest component is the in-country suppliers, those companies operating inside these host countries, very often places where there is an absence of meaningful economic activity beyond the mine site, where the gold mining companies support the impact to develop entrepreneurs and to support the creation of businesses that can have a life beyond the life of the mine site. Again, if you come and join us tomorrow afternoon, you will see Idris Elba discovering the journey that he sees in terms of the positive impact that mining can have to support suppliers. Then, of course, there's payments to employees and payments to government to allow government to carry out their function and the critical services that governments deliver. And then looking at the impact on jobs, every local job at a gold mining operation supports 6 more directly and up to 10 if you look at the indirect impacts. And we did this work with a noted econometrics analysis company who goes and assesses the impact that gold mining has. And importantly, we have seen an increase in in-country employees, both at management level as well as the people on the ground. There is more and more local capacity. And there is still a lot of work to do in terms of increasing gender diversity, but there is directionally heading in the right direction, particularly at the board level. And we hope that by putting this data out there, it will provide a benchmark that others can use to improve their performance and look to increase the proportion of women that are represented in this sector. Just briefly, we looked at this in an Australian context, and what's interesting about Australia is what a significant gold producer this country is. I know that in Australia, a lot of the dialogue is so often dominated by iron ore and coal, but Australia is the world's second largest gold producer, and actually, in our survey, the single biggest country in terms of payments that are made by our members is Australia. Again, the vast majority of that going to suppliers, including, I suspect, many people in this room, but also the contribution made to government and obviously to employees. Now, again, our hope in documenting these figures is to demonstrate the raw financial economic impact that responsible gold mining can have. Clearly, that needs to be used in the right way, and mining companies need to operate in collaboration with stakeholders to make sure that these financial benefits can and do deliver long-term sustainable socio-economic development. So on that note, let me conclude, and I'm going to hand it over to Kelly, who's going to talk about Goldfields and their efforts to engage and support local stakeholders. Thank you, Kelly.
Just waiting for the slide. Thanks very much, Terry. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to their elders, as well as those from Wajak Noongar Budja, where I come from, as well as their emerging leaders, who I hope will continue to walk with us on what has been a difficult path to reconciliation. Goldfields has applied the World Gold Council's stakeholder value creation methodology for over 10 years now. And as Terry's shown, the methodology is used by World Gold Council members to measure how they create value for stakeholders that are impacted most by our mines and projects. What I'm going to do this morning is provide a brief overview of total stakeholder value creation by Goldfields and how this aligns to both our strategy and ESG targets, before focusing in more detail on how we create value for our host communities, those that being the stakeholders often closest and most directly impacted by our operations, but whom have the expectation of benefiting the most and having the opportunity to benefiting the most from those operations. But before I do so, if I could just encourage you to take a quick glance at our forward-looking statements. Just to give a bit of a snapshot of Goldfields, as you can see, we're a global business with 9 mines and 2 projects in 6 countries on 4 continents. Our primary listing is on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange with a secondary listing in New York. In 2022, we produced 2.4 million ounces of gold, and relevant to this discussion, our total value creation was almost 4 billion. Our 2 projects, Windfall in Canada and Salares Norte in Chile, are excluded from total value creation number in line with World Gold Council methodology. But what we're pleased to confirm is that Salares Norte will be added to the mix this year as it's set to produce first gold in the next month or so, with Windfall scheduled to produce first gold in 2026 once it's received the requisite environmental permits to allow construction to commence. What's really fantastic about these projects is the potential that they present for broader stakeholder value creation, and that there's been such fantastic work done with host communities in relation to both of them to date. So in terms of how that almost $4 billion in value creation is broken down, Australia accounts for just about a third, followed by Ghana, which is reflective of their overall share of Goldfields Group gold production, with South Africa and Peru with 1 mine each, both accounting for about 10%. The percentage attributed to our corporate office reflects the dividend and interest payments made to our capital providers. Breaking down value creation by stakeholders, to Terry's comment earlier, it's not surprising that our business partners, being our contractors and suppliers, receive the largest share of this in the form of payments for goods and services. Governments account for 18% through tax and royalty payments, and that also includes our dividend payments to the government of Ghana through its 10% shareholding in our Tarkwin Damang mines. Employees receive about $450 million in salaries and wages, whilst shareholders and bondholders received around $340 million in dividend and interest payments. Our social economic development spend was 1% of our value creation at just over $21 million, traditionally known as corporate social investment, and I'll detail a bit more about what that looks like later on. Stakeholders are a critical part of our ESG strategy, and ESG, as with many other organisations, is now fully integrated in our business and comprises one of our 3 strategic pillars. In late 2021, we outlined our 6 key ESG priority areas and set 2030 targets for all of those priorities. Those priorities are displayed here. As you can see, they comprise 3 broad environmental targets for decarbonisation, tailings management and water management. And whilst we put them broadly in the environmental category, clearly our stakeholders have high expectations, quite rightly so, in relation to the performance in those areas. Our 3 stakeholder-related ESG targets relate to the safety of our people, creating greater gender diversity in our workforce, and stakeholder value creation, the subject of this presentation. As you'll see, the stakeholder targets are focused on value creation in our host communities. By 2030, we want to ensure that 30% of the total value that we create sits with our host communities, whilst also implementing 6 transformative legacy programs that will provide economic value and diversification to these communities well beyond mine closure. Before I detail how we plan to achieve this, let me just provide a brief overview of our host communities. So these are really the communities that live in the vicinity of our mines, are directly impacted by them, and have a reasonable expectation of ongoing engagement and of ultimately benefiting from the operation of our assets. As you can see here, from the roughly 800,000 people living in and around our mines and projects, just over a quarter are directly impacted. Many of these communities are characterised by high levels of poverty and unemployment, and so their social and economic needs and expectations are high, and clearly we play a critical part in working with our communities to address this. These communities also include Indigenous communities in Chile and here in Australia, where we have relationships with our native title holders and other traditional owners. So how are we planning to improve value creation for our host communities? We believe that the greatest benefit that we can provide is to empower our host communities to build long-term social, economic and environmental resilience. We therefore continue to entrench our host community procurement and job creation programs, as well as social economic development and legacy programs, as we believe that this will support both capacity building and economic development, whilst also meeting the needs of our business. In terms of the tools that we use to create community value creation, as you can see from the slide, they're broadly in the categories of host community procurement, employment, SED investment, and our legacy investment programs, which have in the last year have been conceptualised and are currently now being developed and finalised. In terms of procurement, we're guided by our host community procurement strategy to seek opportunities for community-based enterprises to participate in our supply chains. If implemented effectively, host community procurement holds benefits for the communities in which we operate, as well as for our mines. SMEs are a crucial partner for Goldfields. They provide the group with key supplies and services and create jobs in our host communities and host countries. Supporting SMEs is therefore critical as we work towards ensuring 30% of the total value that we create resides in our host communities. To this end, in 2022, we introduced preferential payment terms for SMEs in our host communities, particularly those that are led by minority and underrepresented groups. Those payment terms have been reduced from 30 days to 14 days, helping to address some of the cash flow difficulties that we see are often experienced by SME suppliers. As with host community employment, which I'll touch on in a moment, what we're finding is that achieving those 30% targets are likely to become increasingly difficult as more and more of our business requirements are channeled into the ICT and automation space, which means that we need to continue to evolve our approach in ensuring that we can continue to deliver value to our partners. We continue to prioritise employing host community members in our operations, and we encourage our contractors and suppliers to do the same. This is supported by comprehensive training, education and skills developments to improve the local skills base. At the end of 2022, 87% of our workforce were nationals in the countries in which we operate, and just over 52% lived in our host communities. We're also very proud of the fact that we've created almost 11,000 jobs in the non-mining value chain through our SED and legacy program investments. Turning briefly to our social economic development investments, as I said previously, $21 million were channeled through to our host communities during 2022, and those investments go into infrastructure projects such as roads, hospitals and schools, education and skills development, as well as economic diversification, particularly agriculture. The most exciting for me element that I'm going to touch on today are our legacy programs, and whilst we're short on time, I do want to just spend a moment on this. We've framed and conceptualised a pipeline of transformative legacy programs for implementation between 2023 and 2030. These focus on creating enduring value by addressing our host communities' most pressing development needs, whilst ensuring economic value creation beyond the life of mine and outside the mine value chain. The programmes seek to promote economic diversification and employment, climate resilience, sustainable and profitable agriculture, cultural and heritage preservation, and quality health. We look forward to being able to talk more about this in the future. Just to wrap up, you'll see the outcomes of these strategies and programs, the headline number being that in 2022 of the total value creation of just under $4 billion, 27% or $913 million remained in our host communities. The vast majority of this was through our procurement spend, but significant amounts were channeled through wages and salaries to employees who live in the communities that we impact. For the past 7 years, we've created between 600 and 900 million in community value every year. This amounts to over $5.3 billion, which is a sustained and significant investment in the economic well-being of our host communities. Thank you very much.